The party has started, and your invite is still waiting. I'm talking about the Candy Crush Candy Party, of course. Don't miss the 3 weeks of candy celebrations with Candy Crush Saga. There are loads of fun challenges and some sweet, sweet rewards if you top the leaderboards, like unlimited lives. Then on November 20th, finish it with a bang with a gift of unlimited color bombs for 24 hours. Play Candy Crush Saga now to join in the candy celebrations. Download it from the App Store, Google Play, or Windows Store for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Hey Eagles fans, this is Mike Kaye from NJ Advanced Media. Welcome to the No Huddle Show podcast, where we discuss anything and everything Philadelphia Eagles. You can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, bookmark that, and you can subscribe to our exclusive Eagles Insider text service, where we'll break news, give you insider observations, and provide in-depth analysis. Through Eagles Extra, you can send questions and comments directly to us, and we'll respond to your phone. With me today, as always, is my fellow Eagles beat reporter, Chris Franklin. Today we're going to discuss the latest Eagles injury news, Carson Wentz's criticism, and we're going to preview the rematch with the Giants in Week 10. Chris, how are you doing today?
Feeling rested, Mike. This bye week just went by, it came at a perfect time in the middle point of the season, and feeling a little recharged and ready to talk about some Eagles action. And, as you mentioned before, we're going to get into preview later, and another division game coming up. And how are you feeling?
I'm well. I can't complain. The bye week, like you said, came at the right time. And I think, look, we have really kind of gone off the rails in a lot of ways throughout this season because there's been so much to talk about, from, injuries to Carson Wentz playing poorly, to the offensive line being beaten up every single week, to the defense being inconsistent. I just think it was good to have that week to kind of recharge and look at what the bigger picture is here. And I think we'll start that off with the injuries, right? Because that's really been the key to the Eagles, adversity over the last several years, let alone just the first 8 games of this season. So as of now, I was at practice on Thursday. We're recording this after Thursday's practice. From what I saw from the media availability portion, everybody practiced but Craig James. And I think that's huge. You have Isaac Seumalo's 21-day practice window on the injured reserve list activated. He looks like he's a good shot to play. I don't want to guarantee it, but he was out there. He was in pads. And then I think you look at Alshon Jeffrey. We were talking about it before we got on. It's looking more and more likely that he's going to be in the lineup for the first time this weekend against the Giants. Who's the biggest guy returning from injury, or maybe kind of getting that second week injury push, that really you think is important to beating the Giants for a second consecutive time? Actually, a 9th consecutive time if you look at the overarching rivalry.
I think definitely it's Seumalo. I think if we looked at the last, let's say, probably a good 3-4 weeks that the Eagles played, there's always that inconsistency and uncertainty as who's going to be starting in the, let alone the offensive line, the rest of the offensive line, but especially in the middle at the guard positions. And I think that if you're able to get Seumalo to come back there and play left guard, it adds a little bit more of a normalcy, if you get what I mean, when it comes to just how comfortable and Wentz can be in that pocket, as well as to get some continuity back along that offensive line. And I think it makes him stronger, because we saw what happened with Jamon Brown when he was in there. We saw what happened when Silo Opeta was in there. And I think just having him come back and be that steadying force, and then moving Herbig back over to the right guard spot, it's going to strengthen that interior part of the offensive line. And it should give them some more time, especially when it comes to the interior, when they face the interior pass rush. I think that's going to be that. And then you have Peters and Johnson coming back again as well, too. And it just all flows along that offensive line. Who do you feel is going to be an important return?
Well, excuse me. I think it's got to be Miles Sanders, right? I mean, this team's only running the ball 36.3% of the time. That's in the bottom 5 of the league, in run percentage. That's bad. Carson Wentz is not the type of quarterback. While we've seen him take over games late, he's not a guy who's going to build up the entire game and put the team on his back on a normal basis. I think when you look at the Eagles get away from the running game really significantly for a team that isn't as bad as the other guys in their group, like the Cowboys or the Jaguars. And so I think Miles Sanders returning, he can give you a big play threat. I think he helps you sell the play action fake much better than Boston Scott. And frankly, he's one of their best deep threats on this team. So I think, they didn't have Miles Sanders against the Giants in this past game, and I think he can be a key X factor for this team, along with Dallas Goedert, for example. I mean, look, Dallas Goedert's another guy who, if he's getting targeted more than once in a game, he can take over a game. And I think this is going to be a big game for him coming up this Sunday as well.
Well, I want to say this as well, too, but you have Boston like to beat the Giants the whole entire time. Scott in the backfield coming up right there for it. You think he's not going to be able to contribute when he comes back?
I think you're getting at the point where you don't want him to turn into a pumpkin. You know what I mean? Like,
good reference.
The narrative is like overwhelming that he is the giant killer, right? He's, Boston Scott and the giant beanstalk. Like he's ready to chop it down. I don't remember the story all that well. It's been probably 30 years since I read it. But, Boston's really good in chorus with Miles a lot of the time. And I think they need to get back to that. The problem here is, like, if Boston needs, a rest or whatever, they don't really have a guy to go to. And I think that's why Miles Sanders helps, even if he's on a pitch count. And you also look at it, he's got 2 runs of over 70-something yards. Like, they could really use that in a game like this where you wrote about it this morning. Look, the gap's been tightened between the Giants and the Eagles. The Eagles have dominated this rivalry over the last decade, really, and especially in the last 5 years. And if they win this game, they'll sweep the Giants for the 4th consecutive season. That said, look, the Giants have played well the last few games, and we'll get into this more in our preview, but you need all the playmakers you can get. And frankly, Carson Wentz has not played well. And that's what I kind of want to move into as we get out of the injury phase. Carson Wentz has not played well. I understand that there's a huge group of the fan base that thinks he's criticized far too often. I'm of the belief that he's not criticized enough by the fan base and by other members of the media. Listen, Pro Football Focus has him entering the bye week. He led the league in turnovers. He led the league in interceptions. His completion percentage was down 5% from his career average. Pro Football Focus ranked him 31 out of 36 quarterbacks. I mean, look, he just has not played well. And yes, there have been spurts where Pittsburgh, I thought he played very well for the most part. But outside of that and some like really key moments against San Francisco and against the Giants in the last game, he has not played well. And the defense has really had to carry him. I spoke to Eagles great Ron Jaworski. I spoke to former Giants quarterback Danny Cannell. I spoke to Brian Billick, who won a Super Bowl with the Ravens. There's not one pinpoint reason why he's struggling. And I think that's almost worse than you being able to point out something. But something that Cannell said that I thought was really interesting, you know this as a former quarterback, he's struggling with the risk-reward scenario in the pocket. You get like a split second to say, oh, I see Alshon Jeffrey running the post down the field. He's one-on-one. If I get the ball to the right spot, what's the percentage chance that he makes the catch, it gets incompleted, or you throw for an interception? And Wentz is just struggling to figure that part out. Are you seeing that as well, Chris?
I think it is too. I like in playing quarterback at times. It's almost imagining you have two hands right in front of your face, and you have to do a quick reaction of which one's going to try to smack me in front of them, and I got to dodge and try to make the right direction. It's almost like you have that second twitch instinct. And right now he has he feels like, oh, okay, I got to make the twitch instinct, but he's not executing it well. He's not blocking that hand coming per se, if we can using that type of comparison. But I think the main thing he is trying to push the ball a little down the field too many times. I really do think it. But also I think he's not being helped at when it comes to play calling. I believe it was The Athletic. They had a story that came out recently. They revisited their tiers when it came to quarterbacks. And they looked at, and one of the executives that had graded quarterbacks was, he was anonymous, but had Wentz in his third tier. And the reason he said that was because he felt that he's not the type of guy that is able to go ahead and throw 40, 50 times a game. And also he feels like he needs a run game to help support him, which I kind of agree. I think that there's times when you look at him and it's like, hey, he's good off the play action. When he rolls out, he looks like he's at his best. And I think it would help if Peterson kind of helped him out a little bit if, A, he either went to the no huddle earlier on in the game to get him in that rhythm, or B, you may just have to make a concerted effort to say, hey, you know what? We're just going to pound the ball here about good 20, 30 times, and then we'll just build off of that. So it's a fine tipping point, that a fine balance that this team has to find in order to be successful in this offense. It's getting rough. I mean, now the thing I want to ask you is, do you feel as if he's going to be able to correct this stuff in time for a potential playoff run, being that the NFC East is this week?
Well, I think the problem here is one moment he's a tepid game manager where he's sitting in the pocket and waiting for things to open up and not making the throw at the risk of turning it over. And then he's getting sacked and he's fumbling. And then without caution, he will resort back to his gunslinger mentality and throw interceptions. That's a problem because you never know how you can't play call to that. You don't know what he's going to be on a given moment. And if I was Doug Peterson, I'd be extremely frustrated with his, lack of consistency with his approach to the game. And I think until he finds that happy median between gunslinger and game manager, they're gonna struggle, especially with turnovers. Don't let the 7 interceptions per year over the last 3 years confuse you. He has never been an Aaron Rodgers protect the football type of quarterback. That's never been him. He's gotten lucky with some dropped interceptions. He's been a lot more accurate, and that's allowed him to kind of get by. But he's never been a protector of the football, and I think you're never going to kind of get that out of his head. That said, if you play call for a lot of short yardage stuff and you're not forcing him to heave the ball down the field, you're protecting yourself in that way to an extent, I would think. I really think that this is going to come down to how far Carson Wentz can correct himself over the next 8 games. You're not going to work on his mechanics overnight. You're not going to fix his natural instincts. But I think what you can do is protect him from himself by running the football more, like you said, by scripting a lot of short passes and quick passes, running a lot of tempo. Get him used to timing throws, because right now his timing's off, his accuracy is off, and that's what Doug Peterson's offense is so much predicated on, is timing and accuracy, and you're just not getting that right there. That's why the screen game hasn't worked. It's why the threat of play action doesn't work. It's why there's a lot of turnovers from Carson. I think overall, this is a situation where the Eagles really have to cater to the play calling as opposed to the quarterback. Do you agree?
I agree. I think they really do. They really have to settle in and use his strengths. And that's the one thing you used to saw Doug, and maybe going back to Frank Reich, even Mike Rowe, I thought did a decent job. Was when they looked at what they had in the quarterback. They went, either whether it was Wentz or whoever, they went to go ahead and found their strengths, adapted the offense to their strengths, and went ahead with it. Now it just looks like, at times it looks like they're going ahead and using that and flip the script, saying, okay, we're going to try to make him fit into our offense. And you can't be successful doing that. You look at some of the teams in the league, what they're doing when it comes to, you look at the rookies in the league. You look at Justin Herbert. You look at Joe Burrow. You look at what those teams are doing to try to adapt to the strengths of those quarterbacks, and it was working well early on in their careers. I think the Eagles have to adapt to that a little bit more, that mindset a little bit more, and they have to. It's going to have to become a painful self-evaluation, saying, "Hey, you know what? He's not going to be the guy that could throw it 50 times. He's the guy that's going to be able, almost a la Jake Plummer, but I think a little bit more talent, almost like that, in order to go ahead and be successful." So they're going to have to go ahead and try to fit this offense around him that way.
Well, and I think there's been a lot of I don't want to say excuses, but like there have been a lot of passes for him, no pun intended. The wide receivers have been, a turnstile. The offensive line, he's played behind 7 different iterations of the offensive line in 8 games. Like, it's hard to be successful there, sure. But eventually, you're seeing stuff that's not on the offensive line, not on pass protection, not on the wide receivers, that Carson Wentz is making mistakes on. And I think Ron Jaworski said this best. He's going to struggle mentally, but he's going to be a better quarterback going through this slump, which I thought was a really optimistic view. But when you really think about it, if he can really kind of focus and be very self-aware, maybe he does improve. Maybe this is a really good thing for him and he blows up the second half in a weak division. Like, this division's there for them. But the first task is beating the Giants. And frankly, the Giants should have run away with that game in week 7. They allowed the Eagles to come back and close. Look, the Giants have played really well. They could easily be 4-0 right now in their last 4 games. They're 2-2. They apparently only know how to beat Washington, which is very interesting. Look, they're going to have to be ready for Daniel Jones on the ground. That was abundantly clear after the 90-yard run that he had against them in week 7. That was extremely embarrassing. I do think the defense has really responded since that run. I think they've become very, very cohesive. I think Jim Schwartz has called some really, really good quarters of action for this defense. And really, Brandon Graham's having an incredible year from a number standpoint. He's always been very good. I think he's been their best player for the last 2 years on defense. But that helps, and that helps create turnovers. Let's look at it from the Eagles defense versus the Giants offense. How do you like that matchup?
I like the Eagles defensive line still against this Giants offensive line. I still think they have some. I think that Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, and Malik Jackson, possibly if he does return, I think he can definitely have some success, especially over Will Hernandez, who he's being a little maligned up there in New York right now. So I think they definitely can have some success on that aspect. I worry about the Giants wide receivers against the secondary. I've got no problem with Slay if he winds up covering Darius Slayton, or if he winds up covering Sterling Shepard if he plays. I have no problem with that. I'm more worried about Golden Tate if he's out of the doghouse, mind you, up north against Nickel Roby-Coleman. It's something about or Cravon LeBlanc. It's something about the slot cornerback position for the Eagles lately that has been getting abused a little bit at times, and I worry about it a little bit. Avonte Maddox, that extra week probably helped him heal from his ankle. I'm not so much worried about him being targeted as much as I'm worried about the Giants controlling the middle of the field. And I mean, the linebackers have played well, and the safeties have played a little bit better as well too in coverage. But Everett Ingram is still a threat. You can't discount him running up the middle of the field, throwing when it comes to the passing game. So I'm a little worried about them. I mean, where do you think the Eagles defense can take advantage of this Giants offense?
Well, it's like you said, the offensive line. They're running a 3-man weave at offensive tackle between was it Cameron Irving, their first round pick in Andrew Thomas, and then their third round pick, Matt Perrette. And I've heard of guards rotating. The Eagles did that a little bit at left guard during the Super Bowl year with Stefan Wisniewski and Chance Warmack and Isaac Seumalo. I don't know, man. I just think that that's a recipe for disaster, especially against a pass rusher like the Eagles. Look, I think the linebacker play, like you said, is better. I think it's going to be much harder to run. They're going to become a very one-dimensional team, I think, early on in this game because of the presence of TJ Edwards. I think Alex Singleton has played relatively well. And then, you bring up the secondary. I like Rodney McLeod a lot. I think Jalen Mills has played very well for the most part of the last 2 games. So I'm not necessarily as worried about Evan Ingram. Yeah, that's a kind of a tough matchup, but it looked like Will Parks really bounced back against the Cowboys. So maybe that's part of the plan. Or maybe the plan is to have Will Parks cover Golden Tate. I have no idea. But I agree. The nickel spot is a weakness for them. And look, Tate's going to be motivated. He was suspended for week 9 because his wife got on Instagram and complained about his snaps. I don't know if they want to find a healthy, resolution to their relationship, but Golden Tate does worry me a little bit. He's got revenge on his mind, I'm sure. He also kind of wants to prove himself that he should continue to be targeted. yada, 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 that sort of thing. But like when we flip the script to the other side of the ball, look, this Giants secondary is atrocious outside of James Bradbury, who I would imagine travels with Travis Fulgham. That said, Jalen Reagor's back in the mix. I think they were kind of tepid with their play calling. I mean, they did a lot of short in space sort of route combinations with him last week. I think they let him loose after a week of rest. I think he is going to annihilate their number 2 corner. I think this is the coming out party for Jalen Reagor. I also think no one can cover Dallas Goedert on this team. I've never been a Jabril Peppers guy ever. I know he's from New Jersey, but he does nothing for me. I think he's kind of an average safety in the league, and I think Dallas Goedert's got a good size advantage over him in that regard. I also think Logan Ryan, a free safety, that's still a good matchup with Goddard, depending on who's covering him. I'm not in love with the Giants linebackers. I do think their defensive coordinator has done some really smart things and disguise coverage very well. Their defensive line's tough though. If you don't have Miles Sanders, for more than like a dozen carries, I think they're going to struggle to run the ball quite a bit in this game. We all, beamed about how Boston Scott did as a receiver in that last play, the game-winning touchdown against the Giants, but he didn't really have a ton of success on the ground, and I think that's something to keep in mind in this game. Where are you concerned about for the Eagles' offense against this Giants defense? I know I didn't mention Carson Wentz basically at all in that. I was hoping you would kind of touch some light on that.
Well, I definitely think I worry about the turnovers. I really worry about the turnovers because this Giants team, I believe, is second. I think it was second in the league now, second or third in the league now when it comes to forcing turnovers. I think it was like something like 15 turnovers in this game where they've improved. They definitely have improved. It's not the Giants defense that we saw at the end of last season. They've steadily gotten used to this defense, especially they play multiple sets. I know they're base 3-4, but they play multiple sets, and they're starting to grow into that role, and I really am worried about that. I think it's going to have to be one of those games where if I'm Doug Peterson, I'm falling back more on the traditional West Coast offense stuff and just going slants, outs, hitches. I'm staying within that, and you're going to have to be patient, especially when it comes to this Giants defense, because what they do, they like to go to that zone, and when they go out in that zone and everybody's facing you, you're not going to be able to get as many yards scrambling as Wentz does when he uses his legs, whenever he does that. And you're going to have to rely on your receiver. You're going to have to rely on Fulgham and Reagor. I know they're young, but they're going to have to go ahead and recognize they're going to be in that zone and find the soft spots and hit it that way. Like you said, I think Goddard could have a big game. I really do, because he seems to have a knack for finding those soft spots, especially. And it's going to be interesting too when you look at the way the Giants play. If he's able to go ahead and run, if they go to that 2 deep shell type of zone, if he can find a way through the seams or even like a deep dig, he can be very successful in there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Eagles try to target that. I think they have some success in that. But I think one thing they really, and I really keep hammering this home here, and you mentioned earlier, they have to establish the run. This week, especially, I was looking at the weather forecast. As the game progresses, it's the higher the chance of the rain's going to be. So you may not have that, especially if you fall behind early, you may not have that opportunity to throw the ball cleanly, especially when a quarterback is prone to turnovers. Add a wet ball to that, not feeling too comfortable with that. But I think if they establish the run game, if they go ahead and utilize the short passing game, and Carson Wentz is patient enough when it comes to there, they can go ahead and actually have success against this defense. But
not to cut you off, but it's Thursday. The injury report isn't out yet, but Golden Tate apparently injured his knee during practice on Thursday and was added to the injury report. And Sterling Shepard's been limited due to a toe and hip injuries. Okay, then.
That changes some things.
Yeah, I mean, look, we'll see if, we'll see what happens and if this is maybe something strategic, but yeah, that does change things. I think the Eagles are going to win this game by at least 3 points. But I think that, to your point, weather could be a factor here. And having Miles Sanders will help, right?
Yeah,
in theory.
I think it will. I think it will, especially with pass blocking too. Whenever they do pass, I think it'll help. There's a lot he adds to this. There's a lot he adds to this offense. I think it's going to be tough, but they just if before the season, Deuce Staley said, hey, and Doug Peter both said, he's our bell cow back. He's our 3-down back. He's going to have to be it this week. He really is going to have to be it just to calm everybody down and basically tire out that Giants defense. I mean,
well, and that's a great point, Chris, that you bring up that I actually really wanted to talk about. And we'll talk about this a little bit more next week because I think it should be talked about a little bit more. Is he, built to be that 3-down back? Because right now he's already missed 3 games, right? And he's played in limited fashion. He's already admitted to having fatigue after missing most of training camp. Like, that's a concern. And this is a team that doesn't really invest a ton in the running back position. Remember, he was the highest pick at the position since LaShawn McCoy in 2009, and they're both second-round picks. It's not like they invest a ton. They also don't really pay running backs. So it'll be interesting to see how this kind of all plays out. But I agree. I think he's the X factor in this game. I think he's the guy who's going to lay claim. If he comes out and he balls out and has one of those 50-plus yard runs, that's going to set the tone for this game. And I think the Giants will be – look, the thing that really hurt the Eagles is the Giants, when they're down, they become extremely one-dimensional. And if you can get to that point, Daniel Jones is going to make a ton of mistakes. He's coming off his second non-turnover game of his career. So put that into perspective, guys. If the Eagles can get up 10-0, Daniel Jones is probably set up for disaster. That's what I think the Eagles need to do. It's what I think they will do. What's your score prediction for this game, Chris?
I think I have I had Eagles 23, Giants 20, because the Giants, if they can hold the Buccaneers in check with as many weapons as they had around there on that offense, they can be a problem. So I think it's going to be a close game, old-fashioned NFC East game. It's going to be really tight, and it's going to be stomach churning, I know, for some Eagles fans at times, but I think the Eagles are going to go ahead and continue to top the NFC East. What say you?
Yeah, I've got them winning 27-21. And I think 27-23, excuse me. And I think this isn't a close game like it is on the scoreboard. I think the Eagles get up to like a 17-3 or 17-6 lead at halftime. And a lot of this is playing catch up for the Giants. So we both have the Eagles winning. They need to win this game. This isn't a game that they can take lightly. I've said it basically all season that the pocket of 4 games, the Giants, Cowboys, Giants, Browns stretch, hovering over the bye. If they could go 4-0 in that phase, they can get over 500 and they can make some noise in the playoffs, or at least have that home field advantage in that division title. And if you have a home game in the playoffs, I don't care if it's COVID, there's not a lot of fans in the stands, you do have some sort of an advantage because you don't have to travel. Especially if you're playing a West Coast or Central Time Zone team, or you're playing a dome team, you would much rather have the Saints come to Philly than you would the Eagles go to New Orleans, or you'd rather have the Tampa Bay Bucks come to Philly in January than you go down to Tampa. You know what I'm saying? So, I think we both think the Eagles are going to have a much better second half than they did in the first half. Do you agree?
It's going to be tough. I don't think as well.
I mean, the bar is so low.
It's consistency. The most the consistent thing that this team can do is be inconsistent. I think they're going to see that again when you have that stretch. That stretch is going to be brutal. It's including the Packers and the Saints, who are still probably both be vying for that number 1 spot seed. The Bucks, I think, are going to fall back, but it's going to be a brutal stretch. They'll be inconsistent. It'll be interesting, to say the least. But it's. I just can't see it. I'm trying to. I just can't see anything being better. The only thing I will say is I think Wentz will improve. He's the bright spot.
But then there you go. That's enough, in my opinion. If we're really being honest here,
it won't be the turnover. It won't be. I don't think it'll be as many turnovers. I don't know how much. If it's those turnovers will result. The lack of turnovers will result in touchdowns. I'm not so sure about that because the team in the red zone still has its issues. But it's going to be tough.
Well, Chris thinks this through. I'm going to just say, make sure you sign up for Eagles Extra. You can do that on NJ.com/Eagles. NJ.com/text. Make sure you read all of our stuff on NJ.com/Eagles. We got some good stuff previewing the Giants game, also talking about the Eagles and their kind of mid-season overarching storylines. For Chris, I'm Mike. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you right after the game on Sunday.
Looking for a new podcast to listen to? Here's what we love, courtesy of Acast Recommends.
This is a story about a model Boy Scout.
He won all the medals.
And a cool Scout Master.
Being cool is code for getting high.
And then there was a gunshot. And everything changed. A solid friendship.
They were pals. Chuck said numerous times that Richie was like a son to him.
Until betrayal led to violence.
I pray to God that that's not Richie.
A bizarre mechanism causes a tragic death.
So this was a booby trap, and it was lethal.
Please join us for Season 1 of the Miami Chronicles Booby Trap. Subscribe now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Acast
Recommends.